We're just 3 days to the US presidential election, and it is still too close to call. Well, that is exactly my goal in this video. I'll tell you who I think will win, Trump or Kamala Harris. Let's get into it. So, for all you poll heads out there, here's how it stands. Kamala Harris leads by 1 point nationally, according to the New York Times poll tracker. Of course, that is well within the margin of error. Trump has a slim to chunky advantage in 4 of the 7 swing states. Check out Arizona. Wow. Polls are good to know, but I'm sure Hillary Clinton would tell you to never trust a poll. She was basically on a victory lap in the final days coming up on the 2016 election, only to lose the Electoral College handily. So polls are nice. You can draw insights into voter behavior, but there are a few reasons you should not trust them. One of those is because Donald Trump is on the ballot. One of the truly interesting things about Trump and the polarization that seems to follow him into every election is his ability to kind of wake up the apathetic voter. Whether you hate him or you love him, you're never undecided about Donald Trump. So there's the Trump factor, but also polls are usually a very small sample size. You're not necessarily able to extrapolate to the general population. And what about people who maybe are less educated or just less inclined to participate in a poll? Well, you only know what they think on election day. Let's put the polling aside. That's not what we're here for. Come election day, real people with real problems that matter will be voting, not lines on a screen. And you've got to think, what are the issues that are important to those people? Not the rhetoric about who's smarter between the candidates or who will be the first to shoot you if you break into their house. The answer to that is the Secret Service, by the way. But there are 3 key issues I expect to be top of mind as people approach the ballot come election day. Number 1, the high cost of living / inflation. Number 2, World War III, possibly, and abortion rights. I know, right? So dramatic, but let's break that down. The reality is that people are struggling with high cost of living right now. To be honest, I think that is probably the biggest issue in this election. While Joe Biden oversaw an admirable job growth in his first 3 years in office, especially in manufacturing, which matters to Americans, inflation and slow wage growth have meant that people are sitting there wondering, well, where the heck did my paycheck go? And this is not a problem specific to the United States, really. Here in Canada, it may be the reason Justin Trudeau loses the next election. In this election, you may hear this cost of living problem, this cost of living crisis repackaged as a problem with immigration. The reality is that when done correctly, immigration can boost the country's economy. Unmitigated illegal immigration, on the other hand, can have the opposite effect. Trump has obviously been on the offensive on this issue of immigration and high cost of living. I will make one correction though. Contrary to the well-worn idea that the Biden government is somehow responsible for the high inflation rate, I will make this one counter argument because that is not accurate. The economy was shut down for 2 years because of COVID. That was bound to be inflationary irrespective of who was in power. But let's not debate whether we should have been in lockdown in the first place. Not on this video, at least. For what it's worth, the inflation rate in the US is now back down to around 2.1%, which is not that different to what Trump had on average during his 4 years in office. He had 1.9%. I will tell you this, though. Trump wins on this issue because people will remember the last 3 years and their struggles through peak inflation. They will remember not being able to afford groceries. People will remember the millions of people pouring through the US-Mexico border. And I think people voting on this issue will vote for Trump. On the second issue of World War III, Trump says he is America first. Yeah, that's a big slogan for him, right? He'll tell you that when he was in office, Iran had no money for terrorism because of all the sanctions he placed on them. He will tell you that Putin would never have invaded Ukraine. He basically championed world peace without sacrificing a single American soldier. And he isn't wrong. To be fair, I don't know that those sanctions would work as well these days, especially with Russia and China forming new alliances around the world. I'm talking about BRICS, right? If he continues to flex the dollar like that, the US dollar may not remain the reserve currency of the world much longer, because obviously people are going to look for ways to protect their economy from US sanctions. On the Kamala Harris side, I suppose the Biden Harris administration could say they haven't actually started any wars. And they haven't. This is true. Look it up. It's a weird technicality, I know. The reality, though, is that under their leadership, the Middle East is fast unraveling. There are no proxies anymore. Iran and Israel are trading direct attacks now. And then there's the Russia-Ukraine war. Right now, it's looking like North and South Korea might just weigh in. In fact, North Korean soldiers are on the ground in Russia as we speak. So there are legitimate fears that the world is closer to World War III than it has ever been. Clearly, whatever the US is doing by way of diplomacy is not working. And in those wars, you have to wonder what the end game looks like. Again, on this issue, you struggle to see how people would vote for Kamala Harris. Now I should tie this to domestic security. So Trump has obviously linked the influx of illegal immigrants to higher crime rates. But the truth is there's really no evidence supporting that claim. I'm happy to see facts and figures if you have any, and you can let me know in the chat. Anyways, the last issue I expect to be top of mind as people vote come election day is abortion rights. Full disclosure, I happen to think Roe v. Wade should never have been overturned. Women should have a right to an abortion no matter what part of the US they live. That said, Donald Trump has said people wanted Roe v. Wade overturned so they could vote on abortion access on a state-by-state basis. I think that's dumb. That's just my opinion. I feel like Trump gets wrapped up in the weave, sometimes, and I think, unfortunately, he has peddled a lot of untruths in the process. Like, for example, he said people are allowed to straight up murder a baby after it is born in some democratic states. Simply not true. Right? For a lot of women voting in this election, this is a single issue. This is an issue that basically after that, there's really nothing else you're saying, right? That's why you'll see Kamala Harris is way ahead in the polling of women in this election. Trump is obviously way ahead with the men, right? Anyways, let's talk about who I think will win. I'll tell you my why as well. Who do I think will win the 2024 US presidential election? Right here, right now. If I was to predict, I think it will be Donald Trump. I think without his negative rhetoric, without that negative rhetoric that Trump carries with him, this wouldn't even be close. I know it's a hot take. I actually genuinely think without the negative rhetoric that tends to follow Donald Trump, this would not even be close. And it shouldn't be close because there is a clear appetite for change right now. Like, even Kamala Harris has tried to paint herself as a new way forward. And maybe she is, but she cannot divorce the fact that she's party to the current state of things. Yes, she's a new generation. However, she's part of an old machine. You get it? So what I will say, though, is that people have really short memories, and there's a clear romanticization of Trump's record as president. It is what it is. Trump will win because he is seen as a man with a mind of his own, beholden to nobody. Again, not true, but this is how people see it. He is the messiah that will avert nuclear war if you believe RFK Jr. He can prevent your country from being taken over by cat-eating immigrants, In this election, there seems to be less of an emphasis on climate change and sustainable jobs. And maybe the Democrats could have done a better job there. I personally think that was a mistake. There should have been a bit more attention on that topic. But Trump resonates because he promises to bring jobs back to places like Detroit. Auto workers in that swing state of Michigan, they like that very much, He says it will do this by removing environmental mandates and basically drill baby drill. You'll often catch him saying, "There's liquid gold under our feet." I can't do the Trump voice. But these are very short term and will likely prove to be very dumb in the long run, in my opinion. But we're not ready for that debate right now. Okay? So what I will say, this election has been a bit of a blood sport. You can have no doubt that both sides have fought with everything they had for the votes of the American people. And that's maybe all you can ask for. I think the obsession with collecting endorsements has actually been really funny. I'm just going to say that. On both sides, it's been hilarious. I mean, Trump even worked at McDonald's for a day. I don't get it. Anyways, Kamala, on her side, has leaned into her middle-class upbringing. and has even called on help from someone like President Obama, former President Obama, and in my opinion, former President Obama, the most eloquent president ever. I mean, you can tell how much they wanted just by the fact that they got President Obama to actually pound the campaign trail with them. Ultimately, I do not think it will be enough. Now, if I could vote, I can't because I'm Canadian, but if I could vote, I would vote Kamala Harris. Just because I do not subscribe to the soap opera that is Donald Trump. This is just my opinion. I still think Donald Trump will win, but if I was voting, I would vote for Kamala Harris. People say you should discount this rhetoric around Donald Trump and look at his policies, but here's the thing. That only works if you're not the target of his message. One day it is Haitian immigrants eating pets. Another day it is shithole countries and floating piles of garbage, like Puerto Rico, right? So, truth is, Trump thrives in the denigration of people that do not fit his vision. And I do not think that sort of person should be president. Again, my opinion. I happen to think that politicians ought to understand that there is power to their words. You would think he would have learned from the events of January 6th, like the power of words. But speaking of, personally, I don't know about you guys, but I low-key want to see what Trump does if he loses. Does he admit he even lost? Like, we're still discussing we're still discussing whether he lost from 2020 right now. Anyways, who do you guys think will win this election, and what issues do you think will sway the election the most? Let me know in the chat. I'll see you on the next one. Take care, guys.